public who wishes to comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand feature now.
Usen la manita virtual para hacer el comentario.
Not seeing any board.
No estoy viendo a alguien. Miembros, hay una moción. Yo apruebo la agenda de esta noche. Todos a favor. Yo lo muevo. ¿Algún comentario de la mesa?
All those in favor, please say
Todos
aye.
a favor digan sí.
Chair votes aye. and
Con eso se aprueba la moción.
passes. We are now on to comments from the public.
Ahora vamos a continuar con los comentarios del público.
As a reminder, this portion
Como
of the agenda
recordatorio,
provides
esta
an
parte de la
opportunity
agenda
for
brinda
members
una
of the
oportunidad
public to
para que el
directly
público
address
se
the planning
dirija
board
directamente a la
on
mesa
any item of
directiva
interest to the
sobre
public.
cualquier
However,
tema
the
de interés
provision of
público.
the
Sin
Brown
embargo,
Act
las
include any
disposiciones
action
de la ley Brown,
taken
el código,
on any item
incluye
not
cualquier
included on the
acción que se
posted
tome sobre
agenda.
cualquier artículo que no
I'll
aparezca en la agenda publicada.
limits
Los
allocated
límites del
comments
tiempo
will be 3
asignados,
minutes per person and 20
el
minutes per
testimonio público
topic.
con 3 minutos por
Speakers
persona
are
y 20
asked to
minutos
give
por
their
tema.
name
Se
and
pide a
affiliation
los
so that the
oradores que den
record
su nombre
reflected
y
in the
afiliación
minutes.
para que su registro exacto sea
And I will
reflejada
provide
en los
time
minutos.
for agenda
Dar
items
tiempo para
public
eso,
comments.
para
Any
los
public comment
comentarios públicos.
right now, if you could please
Si hay
use the
un
raise hand feature.
comentario público ahorita, si quieren
And
usar
I'll turn it
su
over
manual,
to Leah to
y vamos
help us
a
with that.
continuar con Alia para ayudarnos con eso.
Hi.
Hola.
Can you hear me?
¿Me pueden escuchar?
Okay, great. This is Selena.
Muy bien, esta es Selena Uri. Yo soy una madre aquí en la
and
escuela de
this member
Churches, también de SM. Yo estaba repasando acerca del informe de la última junta donde se había presentado y yo he notado que la matriculación y en Church Cumberland ha bajado. Entonces estaba pensando por qué esas dos escuelas han sido excluidas de poder matricularse este año, ya que esas escuelas tienen el bajo más grande. Entonces tendría razón que se podían matricular en esa escuela en este año escolar que entra. El año escolar pasado yo recordé que había una preocupación acerca de esa escuela de la primaria de Churches. Entonces no sé por qué no estamos dejando que otros estudiantes del distrito puedan entrar en esta escuela. Entonces, esa es mi pregunta. Yo sé que no pueden responder, pero nomás quería ver eso o abordar eso. No sé si era un error en eso de la página para matricularse o... Y eso es todo. Gracias.
Michelle, what I can do is I can have
Lo que
Jeremy.
yo puedo hacer es que Jeremy puede contactar a Selena para responder a eso después de la junta. Sí, eso sería. Gracias. Y Alía, yo creo que cuando estás hablando, no estás desactivada, no te podemos escuchar. No se escucha.
Is there more public comment or just that one?
¿Hay más comentarios públicos o más ese? ¿No más uno? Ok.
Thank you.
Gracias, muy bien.
Oh, don't need to unmute myself. Or
No
mute myself.
necesito
All right.
desactivar
We are
mi
now
micrófono.
on to
Ahora
item
vamos a
4,
continuar con el artículo
continuing
4,
discussion and
repasar y
implementation
deliberar
of implementation
actualización de implementación de educación
We'll turn it
presencial.
over to you, Dr.
Vamos a
Gallagher.
continuar con el doctor
Yes,
Gallagher.
and I'm going to quickly turn it over to
Y voy a hablar un
Nishihara,
poco con
who
Jeremy
will,
Nishihara.
display the presentation. And
Va
the
a
intention
dar la
here is to
presentación y
go
nuestra
over
intención aquí
some
es
information
repasar
and invite
información
questions, of
y
course,
también queremos que hagan
so that
preguntas
we're thorough in our
para
response
que
and
así
everyone
vamos
knows
a dar
what
las
our
mejores
plans are moving
respuestas
forward.
posibles y cuáles
So
son
go ahead,
nuestros planes.
Mr. Nishihara.
Entonces, continúa el señor Nishihara.
Excellent. Good evening. Can everyone?
Buenas tardes. ¿Todos pueden ver esto?
Excellent. All
Muy
right.
bien.
As Dr. Gallagher
Entonces,
stated,
como
this is
el doctor Gallagher ya
an update
ha
to
dicho,
our
esta es como una
recent
actualización acerca
implementation.
del plan de
Just a
implementar
bit of background.
la
We
instrucción en
have
persona.
approved our
Es
elementary
una
return to
información,
in-person
lo que
model,
hemos
and
aprobado, el modelo de regresar
received a pretty
a las
thorough update on
escuelas,
our progress with middle
el
school.
progreso que hemos
So
hecho
this
para las
is
escuelas
an
intermedias.
opportunity for us
Esta es
to
una
update
oportunidad
you
para que
and
los
hear questions about how
actualicemos
we're
y escuchar sus
implementing
preguntas
those
de cómo
plans
estamos
to
implementando
date.
estos planes
I
a la
apologize, this
fecha. disculpas que esta presentación está un poco más, es mucho texto porque ha habido mucha información que hemos estado dando, entonces nomás quería tener la oportunidad de repasar eso, los puntos más importantes de este plan de implementar esto. Y quiero también decir que mi nombre estaba en yo era el que iba a presentar esto, pero he visto muchas personas que participaron a hacer esta presentación en las últimas 6 de 8 semanas, en ese modelo de la escuela primaria y los otros modelos de primaria, y para implementar esto. No estoy incluyendo los 2 semanas de Navidad, pero que no estamos trabajando en ese tiempo. Entonces, ahorita, cómo está ahorita, los niveles actuales es el grupo de supervisados del aprendizaje. Empezó a principios de noviembre y estoy feliz de decir que tenemos 10 en cada escuela. Entonces, todas las escuelas tienen la SLGs en cada escuela. Y una información, tenemos 109 estudiantes. Este número sí cambia, más dado el hecho que los estudiantes están participando, que los estudiantes que necesitan asistencia, que tener acceso a la educación virtual. Entonces, 7 de las escuelas están días completos y 3 de las escuelas solamente van por mitad del día. Entonces, uno de los recintos están viendo qué demanda, qué se necesita para tener un día más de las escuelas comparados a ir a la escuela por días completos. Entonces, estamos dando una diferente manera de ver cómo hacemos eso, las maneras, estamos recibiendo comentarios de los padres y lo que ellos están diciendo acerca de que sus hijos vayan a la escuela de manera presencial, ya que de la manera que más personas para el personal empiecen a trabajar en las escuelas. Cada recinto escolar individuo ha hecho mucho trabajo de contactar a los padres. Esto fue algo muy importante para la mesa, que podíamos contactar a esas familias que tienen estudiantes que necesitan más ayuda. Y todos los coordinadores de eso, de que los coordinadores que fueron a contactar a esos padres, ellos han hecho mucho trabajo, estaban contactando y diciendo toda la información que se necesita. Ha dado mucho que ha necesitado. Antes que los estudiantes entren a la escuela, sí se tienen que asegurarse que están saludables antes que entran a la escuela. Entonces ha habido mucha comunicación exacta. A veces se dura mucho, como 2 o 3 veces para llamar a los padres para que puedan aceptar esto. Te digo, ahorita un problema número uno es que el regreso de todos los estudiantes en este grupo supervisado del aprendizaje debido al COVID-19 y los casos que han estado parados, muchas personas no se sienten muy seguros con todos los protocolos, pero todavía vamos a revisar con ellos y explicar un poco más para dejarles saber de cómo está esto y cuál es la oportunidad que pueden. Entonces, esa es una preocupación que sí tenemos, que se tiene que abordar y se va a abordar con información de los protocolos que se da, pero sí dura un poco de tiempo. Yo creo que sería bien tener preguntas después de cada sección porque sí son áreas distintas. Entonces, si Michelle está bien contigo, voy a pasar aquí en ese grupo del grupo supervisado del aprendizaje.
Board, is there any questions on
¿Mesa,
this
alguna
specific
pregunta en esta área específica?
area? And just go ahead and speak since I can't
Y
hear everyone.
simplemente pueden hablar porque no los puedo ver todos. No tengo una pregunta, pero tengo un comentario. Estaba hablando con Mike hoy y vi todas las escuelas intermedias. Quiero simplemente decir que sí lo estamos haciendo bien, que sí estamos aplicando todo. Cada escuela tiene diferente manera de hacer algo, pero la verdad se puede ver que estamos aprendiendo de lo que estamos haciendo. Como las escuelas que vi hoy se veían muy cómodos, seguros, que todo estaba bien. Estaba bien ver todos los alumnos trabajando y es bien utilizar todo eso. Isabel, tienes que decir algo porque no te pueden ver. Sí, también quería decir que los estudiantes de los grupos serían muy cómodos, y que el espacio donde estaban es muy buen trabajo de cómo lo están haciendo con esto, y el hecho también de que es que unos estudiantes no, a lo mejor no vienen, no asisten, a lo mejor no podemos, a lo mejor podemos revisar y a lo mejor ayudarlos o apoyarlos con eso, una manera de ayudarlos, a lo mejor la transportación, porque de los dos lados, que unos hijos, unos alumnos pararon de ir a la escuela, que necesitaban más espacio, no sé, algo que podemos ayudarlos, a lo mejor no, es la vida como es, pero y no sé, amor es algo fácil que se puede
And Isabel,
arreglar. Y a
I think
Isabel,
that's
gracias por mencionar
a better
eso.
way of saying what I was trying to
Esa es
say, which
una
is
buena manera de
if
decir
it works
que
for that
si
family
sirve
for those
bien
2
para
weeks,
esa familia, para esas 2
and the
semanas,
schools are
pero
trying
luego
to
las
listen to
circunstancias
them,
cambian,
one
pero
of our
luego las
large
escuelas sí
campuses
están
can be
respondiendo a
great.
eso. El
You know,
equipo de
the
Tasha,
whole day,
el
it
día
does
ese
take a lot of
completo
endurance
sí
to then go
tiene
kind of from,
mucho
the fall was, and if a student is in
que ellos
a
puedan
school
continuar de
on this
eso
campus now for 6
en ese
hours,
recinto escolar. Después de 6
so
horas
there's
uno se
various
cansa,
services
entonces los
that has to
recintos
be
de verdad
provided,
apoyan eso,
and
ese
make things
lado,
comfortable for them
incluyendo
and help as
asegurándose
much
que
as we
sea
can. So I'm
un
glad you brought
ambiente
that up.
cómodo para todos.
Excellent. Nancy, Michelle, if you don't mind,
Muy
I can
bien,
see
Michelle,
the
sí,
screen.
yo puedo ver
I
que
can,
sí está bien, yo puedo ver que necesita hacer comentario.
Dr. Newkirk.
El señor señorita Newkirk.
So are we inviting
Entonces estamos invitando que
any kind of thought process
un
around
proceso de
expanding
pensamiento, de
to
expandir
supervise learning
este
with
grupo de
a wraparound that
supervisados
would
de la
equivocate
instrucción
supervised
o la manera
time
de que tener que tiempo
such that
supervisado
teachers could have
para
a
que los
full
padres puedan tener
work day
un día típico de
because
trabajo,
we want to
porque queremos,
minimize the amount of cohorts that
minimizar
are
las maneras de
engaging
grupos
in.
que están participando en esos.
Do sites have wraparounds?
Entonces no hay
Are
una manera que
agreements
hacer
already
algo, o a lo mejor unos acuerdos
with
que ya
Untitled
tengan
Childcare, or is this something
acerca
that
de
is exploring as
ayuda de cuidado
the
en el sitio o de los estudiantes
interest and need for
o intereses o
supervised learning
necesidades para estos grupos supervisados de
So I think I'll
aprendizaje.
answer that 2 ways, and then I can
Puede
I'll let
responder eso
Tasha
de dos
answer
maneras y
question.
luego Tasha puede decir algo si ella
Our
quiere.
priority right now is that
Nuestra
second group of
prioridad es
SLPs who
que
need
ese
big
segundo
capacity,
grupo de estudiantes que están
and then
aprendiendo el
getting
idioma inglés, que
the wraparound or the extended service would be
ese
point
servicio
17, but we would then start
decidiendo que
closing down
sería la
sections.
siguiente
I
paso
don't think we
que
have anything in place
haríamos.
per se
Pero ahorita no
right now
tenemos
to do
algo
that,
puesto
so
en
we're
lugar,
working
pero
to
ese
fill those
sería
slots and get more space
el
in.
siguiente paso
That's
que
definitely
vamos a
a
hacer eso,
priority.
pero eso sí es
Dr.
una
Dean,
posibilidad.
anything else you want to
Doctor,
add on
si
that?
quieres decir algo.
Yes, that's the main thing. And then
Y
being
esa es la
mindful
cosa
of the staff
principal que
availability,
tenemos
staff
que ver, los
availability,
la personal correcta, incluso los horarios.
looking at it too, we could extend it
Viéndolo
to
de,
using
podemos
more, but it may be a
de
little
días
limited
extendidos,
sometimes. I
pero
think that's
podemos
just
tener más
our
trabajo que
level of responsibility.
entonces
And
ese
then if we
primer
can add more,
nivel de
then
responsabilidad. Si luego si podemos agregar más, luego lo agregamos. Muy bien, gracias. Excelente.
All right.
I didn't hear the answer
No
about
escuché acerca de la respuesta de transportación. No, ¿qué es el pensamiento acerca de eso? Nomás una
Okay.
actualización.
Tasha, I didn't know if you were going to jump in. I was just
Tasha, sí, sí, yo digo.
the way the sites have been
La de manera que los recintos escolares han estado trabajando con eso, que puede ser parte de la transportación, pero si tenemos casos especiales únicos, si estamos viendo eso, acerca de nuestros servicios de transportación y con las personas con que trabajamos, aquí tenemos como uno o dos casos que están utilizando este apoyo, entonces estamos trabajando eso caso por caso.
Tasha, just as quick follow-up, is
Pero
what you're
nomás
talking
como para responder, eso simplemente es para los estudiantes en educación especial, o sea, le aplica a cualquier estudiante. Esto le aplicaría a cualquier estudiante en nuestro LGF. Esto sería parte de los servicios para esos estudiantes, además de los apoyos. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que los grupos, los grupos de aprendizaje supervisados. Yo no sabía si este es uno nuevo, disculpa. No, es el mismo.
Thank you, Tasha.
Gracias, Tasha.
If there's no other questions
Si no hay otra pregunta, podemos- ahora voy a continuar. Vamos a hablar acerca de las escuelas primarias en persona. Teníamos el modelo que se presentó y teníamos muchos juntas para los padres y en diciembre ya luego tuvimos la encuesta de la preferencia de los padres. Entonces les vamos a dar los datos de acerca de eso, de regresar desde la última vez que se cerró esa encuesta. Así continuamos contactando a los padres. No nomás dijimos, no, ya se acabó la encuesta. No, ese nomás es un punto para poder empezar. 46% de los padres indicaron de que se querían mantenerse virtuales. 25% dijo querían permanecer con el maestro. 16% dijo que querían regresar a la educación presencial y luego el 13% no estaban seguros. Entonces, esto es muchas gracias a todos los distintos escolares por contactar a todas las familias y continuaron con la comunidad y llamar y podían ver que mayoría de ese 13% no respondieron porque habíamos puesto que si no respondían iban a mantenerse de manera virtual. Había un porcentaje chico, sí, que me gustaría estar en persona, pero era un porcentaje muy chico y otro porcentaje más pequeño es que esas familias ya se habían mudado del distrito. Entonces, la razón que quería mencionar eso es que había muchos, 25% se quería mantenerse con los maestros y el otro porcentaje del 46 ya se fue más al 50, como más de 50% de mantenerse virtual. Entonces, ese es nuestro punto de donde empezamos a hacer las preferencias de los padres. Lo siguiente paso de la segunda y tercera semana de diciembre es que tener eso de eso es todo lo personal que ya están clasificados para poder juntar eso. Antes del descanso del diciembre pudimos regresar y el 4 de enero y por fin poner todo esto en lugar de los grados del pre-kinder, kinder y el primer grado. Les quiero dar una actualización acerca de eso. Yo creo que compartí una, un equipo para poder reabrir las recintos escolares. Es una recomendación que 5 de nuestras clases del pre-kinder se mantengan de manera virtual. Teníamos como 17 estudiantes del 109 del 109 estudiantes que querían estar en persona, pero si recuerdan del kinder está a través de 5 recintos escolares, entonces sería 2 o 4 o 3 de recintos escolares. Entonces tendríamos que interrumpir todo el programa del pre-kinder. En adición, teníamos problema para ver cuál recinto escolar sería el principal. Y luego tendríamos que tener transportación y que todos iban a tener que llegar allí. Entonces ahorita para eso todos los recintos escolares al pre-kinder se va a mantener se va a mantener virtual, pero no quiere decir que no vamos a continuar a tener las conversaciones y si vamos a un día llegar a estar a la educación presencial. Nuestro proceso de plan, de planear esto, es verlo de manera más grande hasta todo el distrito. Lo que hicimos es que nos enfocamos en cada recinto escolar y tomamos el número y ver las necesidades de las comunidades, incluso a través de las encuestas de los padres. No sé cómo decir esto, pero esto permitió tener la flexibilidad de ver cada recinto de manera diferente. Yo también quiero mencionar que este proceso fue una colaboración muy grande y comunicación con todos nuestros maestros. Entonces les queremos dar un crédito a ellos por poder colaborar con nosotros en este proceso, hablar con todos nosotros, ya que fue muy importante, incluso entender que nuestra meta principal es poder abordar las necesidades de los estudiantes. Les voy a dar 3 sabores, le voy a dar 3 sabores de cómo va a ser. Estoy un poco, no estoy seguro exactamente cómo se va a ver esto, pero quiero decir, de hecho, dando el hecho de que ahorita estamos en el morado en el condado. Entonces, aprecio que ahorita estamos viendo, estamos caminando en este camino angosto. Entonces, vamos a decir distrito escolar A, tienen 19 estudiantes en 19 estudiantes entre el kinder y el pre-kinder que se quieren estar en persona. Y teníamos personal que tenían trabajo, que han trabajado enseñar en el kinder y el primer grado. Entonces, en esta área que ellos tendrían una clase de combo, de combinación. En este caso, el kinder estaría en la mañana y luego el primer grado sería en la tarde. Entonces, así se vería esa clase de combo. Entonces, el otro kinder y el primer grado se mantenía virtual del primer grado, viendo eso. 85, íbamos a poner a abordar esa necesidad de 85% de las personas. Entonces, muy buen trabajo. Entonces, es el sabor número A. El sabor B es que en el segundo recinto escolar que iban a tener 16 estudiantes, no, 16 padres que querían indicar que sus hijos llegaran al kinder, entonces iban a tener una clase de kinder, sería en la mañana y en la tarde, pero luego en primer grado, el de educación presencial sería, estaban más interesados en un día completo del grupo supervisado de aprendizaje. Esta era una de las escuelas que estaban dando prioridad a un grupo segundo de ese grupo de supervisado. Entonces, ese sería 99.9 que íbamos a poder hacer eso. Entonces, sería nomás una clase de kinder. Luego los siguientes serían virtuales con otro grupo SLG en un día completo. Entonces, se puede ver como cada escuela se veía diferente. Y luego la escuela número C es lo que estamos esperando, donde hay suficientes estudiantes pasar en el kinder y hay una sección del primer grado. Entonces va a haber unas clases de una clase de kinder y una clase de primer grado. Entonces estamos viendo si hay como un 70% de los estudiantes en esos niveles de grado. Pero todo eso tiene que ver, podemos reconfigurar y estar dentro de nuestro contrato, incluso debido a los contratos de los números de clases virtuales y presenciales. Y yo sé que yo sé que una de sus siguientes preguntas sería, ¿cómo identificamos los maestros? Esa es una de las cosas que hablamos. Empezaría con la preferencia de los estudiantes. Luego usamos la encuesta que tomaron los maestros y luego de los voluntarios y luego la experiencia que maestros han tenido en el pasado. Y luego tenemos mucha información entre el contrato que sería muy importante que se iban a entender de los maestros y por qué están seleccionados. Entonces, eso es de la escuela primaria en persona. Entonces voy a parar de compartir la pantalla, así Marshall pueda ver a todas las personas aquí.
All right, board, any questions?
¿Tienes alguna pregunta?
Jeremy, I have a question.
Jeremy, tengo una pregunta y luego vamos a ir continuar con Nancy. Los maestros para el kinder y el primer grado, aunque no ha estado pasando, los maestros van a tener reconfigurar todo, o todavía no se han contado esos maestros. Sí, muy buenas preguntas. Esas conversaciones están pasando ahorita en la actualidad. No estamos asegurando que los números hay un equilibrio entre los números. Ustedes esos sitios sí ya han estado hablando, pero yo creo que ya va a empezar. Recursos humanos ha estado asegurándose que todas se respondan todas las preguntas que tengan de todas las personas, pero sí es algo que estamos hablando sobre eso de los maestros.
Thank you. Nancy?
Gracias. Nancy,
Testing.
acerca de que se le apruebe a los personal.
tested before they
personal se les va a probar antes que empiecen o
and I was also on a
también quería decir si
CSBA Zoom meeting and the
en la
county
junta Zoom de
assured
SPCA,
me that there might not be
el condado
enough
nos
demand
asegura
for
que
their
no hay suficiente,
static testing site.
que hayan
And so they
sitios donde
are
se pueden
also
tomar pruebas como para COVID.
staff
Entonces están animando que el
from all
personal de todos los
districts
distritos
utilize the county office of ed.
utilicen el condado, la oficina del condado para que puedan
But you
también
can get your spouse an
probar.
appointment as well. I think
También
that's
les
the same.
puedes dar su pareja también una prueba
Testing
para
and
el
the
COVID.
symptom screeners, it was
Entonces,
a
estos
little
de
bit
tomar
of an
las
update,
síntomas,
but I think at this
eso es
point,
un poco más de las
it
acerca de las
we don't have
actualizaciones,
a
pero
great built-in
ahorita sí
board, but I think
tenemos
at
los
least cycle
acuerdos,
at least bi-weekly
pero
testing
queremos
programs.
que
And
a un
so
programa que
we
se
definitely would have that.
prueben, que
It's
se
not a
tome
prerequisite,
la
but
prueba
it's definitely a
como una
prerequisite
vez
that
cada
we
2
would require
semanas,
that
no es algo requerido, pero sí estamos
staff
recomendando esto.
would be
Pero los
subject to the
personal
mandatory testing.
sí,
I want
sí
to
es
be very explicit
mandatorio que ellos
that
se
we're saying
prueben, tomen
we're
esas
not saying
pruebas.
vaccinations because
No
that would
estamos diciendo
prompt an attendance
que
of
se
over
tomen
1
las
non-site
vacunas para
testing
eso,
for
pero que se
absenteeism.
prueben
In addition,
acerca de
the
síntomas de
site would
COVID,
have to complete
incluso
those
que los
tests. And
personal
so
tienen que decir si han tenido
I don't want to
síntomas.
say we try, but just
Entonces me
to
gustaría
say
decir
that
que estamos
it
tratando,
wouldn't
pero
be a prerequisite to
no
test
sería
every
algo
employee just because
requerido
they do it.
si regresen.
Right, got it.
Thank you.
Muy bien, gracias.
Moving on.
Excellent.
Excelente.
There we go. Okay. Middle school in person.
Entonces, las escuelas intermedias de educación presencial, eso es algo más fresco que está en su mente, algo que hemos hablado acerca de este modelo, más para que los miembros que no asistieron a esta junta, sí estamos enfocados en el sexto grado y los estudiantes que no tienen acceso al programa virtual. Entonces, estamos esperando que que llegamos a un acuerdo que hicimos el viernes pasado. Entonces, gracias a eso por agarrarnos a ese punto. Entonces, ahorita están teniendo esas conversaciones con las escuelas primarias porque hay 2 grupos para el sexto grado, para la escuela de San Idomir, pero estamos viendo eso de los personal, entonces están participando con eso y planeando. Entonces, aunque han identificado cuáles estudiantes quieren, pero todavía están trabajando en el horario y todo eso. Entonces, otra vez ha habido mucha deliberación acerca de la presentación la última vez. Entonces, si hay una pregunta acerca de eso, podemos responder eso ahorita. Entonces, mucha de esa información se cubrió la última
George,
vez.
is there any questions about
Mesa, ¿hay una pregunta acerca de la escuela intermedia?
Oh, I think the last time we talked about
Creo que la última vez que hablamos
that,
sobre eso,
you were looking at
estamos
afternoon
viendo
supports for the
como
students
apoyos en
that
las
have
tardes para los
been
estudiantes. No sé si
taking
ya
notes for us.
ha hecho algo nuevo.
We just
Es
had
tan
that meeting
reciente
about it.
que
So,
ya tuvimos la
I mean, I
junta
know
para
you're
eso, que
working and
yo sé que
working,
entonces
but
estaba
just
trabajando y
if you've got
trabajando.
any ideas around that.
¿Tienen unas ideas acerca de eso? Sí, sí tengo unas ideas. Yo sé que ya estás hablando un poco más adelante, pero es un tema muy interesante. Sí hemos hablado sobre eso de las 2 escuelas intermedias, dando el modelo de las mañanas y o la tarde. Han estado viendo un programa de Morales para ver si tienen la supervisión en el resto del día, no solamente la mañana. Entonces, para las 2 escuelas, una opción que podría ser que solamente en la tarde para ese grupo supervisado o continuar con esos grupos. Sí, eso es algo que estamos aprendiendo.
Y el interés de la mesa directiva se expresó y lo pusimos ya en el radar y definitivamente lo vamos a poner como el plan.
any other questions?
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
All right.
Si no les importa a la audiencia, las diapositivas son un poco aburridas porque tienen muchos puntitos, entonces lo voy a hacer sin la presentación, ¿bien? Entonces, lo que usted está diciendo, Bridget, tenemos tanto a SMS como a CMS, tenemos voluntarios y ellos están haciendo actividades de difusión, de enriquecimiento también, deportes. Si un miembro del personal tiene interés en practicar ajedrez o no sé cuántos habrán interesados en eso, pero está en proceso de planeación y darles la planeación para una de las secundarias para darles tiempo y incluirlo en uno de los cohortes y no dejar que pase lo que queda del año escolar sin hacerlo. Y estamos lanzando en agosto las actividades después de clases para los estudiantes de la secundaria. Si tienen un IP, entonces tiene que pasar por administración y para hacer un par de veces a la semana hacer salidas al aire libre. Y muchos están interesados en arquería, en el juego del arca. El, educación especial, necesitamos asegurarnos de que trabajemos en eso. El equipo de Tasha y los psicólogos, de todos los maestros, todos los otros proveedores queremos identificar y tener la preferencia del padre de familia y del tutor legal. Y ya se recolectó esos datos, perdón, y para suplir esas necesidades de los estudiantes mientras estemos en el nivel púrpura y no se incluyó durante el proceso, pero ya sabemos qué hacer para cuando regresemos a clases en persona. Es un reto de tratar de suplir las necesidades no con las guías que tenemos ahora. Y quiero agradecerle al departamento por tratar de suplir las necesidades individuales de los alumnos y los voluntariados, nos ayuda ese trabajo que ellos están haciendo para saber y para suplir las necesidades de cada uno de los estudiantes y ofrecerles los servicios. No sé si Tasha, usted puede hablar más de eso.
No, that was great.
Eso estuvo muy bien, Jeremy. Sí es un reto porque tenemos múltiples eh, cubetas y lo que no es verbal es la responsabilidad y el cumplimiento que tenemos en cuanto a las guías y los reglamentos federales. Y eso hace que sea una dinámica interesante, pero pienso que estamos haciendo un buen trabajo y hemos estado trabajando arduamente y hemos estado hablando con cada maestro. Ya tenemos los datos que necesitábamos. Ahora es cuestión de hacer que los maestros y el personal implementen lo que se tiene planeado. Bien, ¿alguna pregunta en cuanto a la educación especial y el programa de enriquecimiento?
For the middle school, sixth grade cohorts, the in-person.
Para los cohortes de sexto grado en
Just
presenciales,
from going to the SLG today,
yo revisando el SLG
the
hoy, que fui a
administrator
verlos,
was taking us around.
el administrador nos estaba
Some of the kids
mostrando
who weren't attending
a
for
algunos de los
several
niños
reasons they were finding a hard time
que
getting to
no
campus,
asistían era porque les estaba costando trabajo llegar al plantel escolar. Estoy seguro que ellos se habrán contactado con Tasha a ver si hay una excepción especial para ellos.
What about for
Pero, ¿qué hay de
cohort thing? Is it going to be the
lo
same
del
thing?
cohorte? ¿Eso va a ser lo
Are you
mismo
planning to, if
o
it's
van a
really, if the kids
planear?
who aren't
Porque
responding,
si
then it's
estos
really
no
hard
son los
to
niños que no están respondiendo, entonces
track
sería
them.
muy difícil tratar de atraerlos. ¿Hay algo diferente que ustedes estén pensando para abordar esto o lo están continuando caso por caso? Está hablando del SLG, estoy hablando de la expansión de los cohortes para sexto grado, que es, y particularmente para las escuelas que no están en la ruta, digamos las escuelas que están afuera de la ciudad, no sé cuál sea la ruta. Yo pienso que caso por caso es importante, porque los sitios de las escuelas ahora están tratando de comunicarse con los padres. Tenemos conocimiento del problema de transporte dado que están llegando los estudiantes de diferentes áreas y, y para el SLG sabemos eso y estamos tratando de rastrear los datos individuales. Y la razón es que el transporte, hay un segundo de distancia comparado con los SLG, pero es algo que definitivamente queremos tratar de abordar. Sí, vamos a hacerlo caso por caso. Y sí, estamos trabajando con los sitios de las escuelas para asegurarnos que ellos puedan llegar allá, porque desafortunadamente eso es otra de las barreras que tal vez se tengan que abordar. Y por eso es que los lugares de escuela tienen que también abordar esto. Gracias.
Any other questions?
Excelente.
I guess I would just add a couple things.
Voy a agregar un par de
on
cosas.
this, Bridget. You know,
Y tal vez, Bridget, usted piense en esto. Yo asistí a una junta con el pediatra de Stanford, creo que fue la semana pasada, y
during that meeting,
durante esa junta,
particular doctor was
ese doctor en particular estaba compartiendo muchos datos acerca de la seguridad de la instrucción presencial. Y la premisa es que en las escuelas donde hay seguimiento constante y profundo de los protocolos, hay de poco a nada de transmisión. Y yo salí de esa junta diciendo, wow, sí, lo he escuchado mucho y yo estoy convencido, pero las personas que realmente necesitamos convencer son a las familias. Y nosotros les hemos dado permiso para hacer que elijan hasta ahora, pero en la primavera, en verano, cuando realmente vamos a tratar de tener una experiencia robusta de experiencia de clases presenciales, necesitamos que ellos eh, pedirle a, digamos, comunicar el trabajo que el Departamento de Saneación y Salud ha comunicado, que ellos sepan las cosas bien, porque eso ha sido una barrera y es preocupante y es comprensible. Y lo otro que yo diría es, estoy segura que ustedes han escuchado dos cosas. Las juntas yo también lo he escuchado, que hay que asegurarnos de que que estén separados. La propuesta del gobernador para las becas, para las escuelas y distritos que regresen para clases presenciales. Y lo que hay que subrayar ahí es que hay una propuesta, que hemos hablado hasta 1 de febrero. En la junta que estuve ayer también resaltaron el hecho de que no van a tener una audiencia sino hasta el final de la próxima semana, así que ya el tiempo no funciona, pero una parte de eso puede ser implementado. Entonces está eso. Y la segunda parte es que hay un tipo de como de guías consolidadas que, por ejemplo, elimina el concepto de la mano de obra, que lo reemplaza con las escuelas que puedan abrir si la cuenta de los casos bajan. Entonces es una dinámica diferente. En este punto, nada interfiere con nuestros planes de negociar los planes con las asociaciones, perdón, porque hay un requisito cuando regresemos que los casos bajen a un nivel. Entonces, esa es una manera larga de decir que nada de eso interfiere con nuestros planes. Vamos a trabajar en los requisitos y asemblar los documentos que son necesarios y consolidar los planes y publicarlos, porque eso es parte de los requisitos para abrir las escuelas y lo vamos a tener listos. Esperemos que pronto para cuando las escuelas puedan abrir al final de este mes. Espero que haya tenido sentido lo que he dicho.
All right, any other questions before we go?
¿Alguna otra pregunta antes de proceder?
I was wondering if Jeremy, you were going to say something.
Jeremy, ¿usted iba a decir algo acerca de vacunas o no?
That's kind of on the last, yeah, that's kind of our next step.
Ese es nuestro próximo paso. Sí, vamos a tratar esto ahora mismo. Los protocolos de seguridad de COVID-19, va a haber pruebas de COVID-19. Nancy habló algo de esto. Estamos muy agradecidos por el Hospital El Camino, porque desde septiembre hemos tenido más de 500 empleados que se han hecho la prueba y vamos a continuar eso porque como no hemos regresado todavía, estamos explorando otras oportunidades de pruebas. Estamos tratando de planear esta presentación la tuvimos, la vamos a tener también el día que regresemos. Y la única opción que tuvimos para PCA, la prueba del condado. Cuando llegue más información, la persona pasa por cada proceso. Estamos tomando este tiempo para apalancarnos de ese programa que tiene el hospital El Camino y explorar un par de opciones más de oportunidades para ofrecer pruebas en el sitio para todo nuestro personal. Hay una opción de PCR y que estamos explorando el uso de una prueba rápida, Avid Rapid se llama, perdón, no soy experto en este campo de ninguna manera, pero estos son términos que ya he incorporado en mi vocabulario porque he trabajado con esto diariamente. Y la ventaja del Avid Lab es que los resultados salen en 15 minutos en vez del Curative o el Valencia que tiene un periodo de 24 horas para saber el resultado. Es una manera larga de decir que estamos usando este tiempo para explorar otras opciones y para poner un modelo que pueda, que si sea necesario, utilizarlo más allá de cuando regresemos a la escuela. Eso es de lo del las pruebas COVID-19. El filtro de detección vamos a seguirlo implementando hasta el final de enero. Vamos a seguir filtrando la detección de síntomas para los estudiantes y el personal. Cuando regresemos en persona, necesitamos que tengan una aplicación, algo que se llama Ruvna. Es un proveedor tercero que nos da un puntaje. Es importante para nosotros porque hipotéticamente la escuela B, el ejemplo que les daba, el corte que regresa en persona, esa clase se va a reflejar en Rutna. O sea, todos los padres van a poder, no se les va a molestar y se va a agregar una herramienta para agregar a los SLGs que se puede crear inmediatamente. Hubo una preocupación de cuál es el filtro de detección. Estamos usando uno que es temporal, a menos de que alguien tenga el acceso y para empezar ese proceso de detección de síntomas para los estudiantes y el personal, porque esa es una de nuestras primeras líneas de defensa para cumplir nuestros protocolos, perdón. Y también estamos empezando a utilizar este sistema. Lo último es mantenernos al día con los requisitos. Es el 645 y como saben ustedes tenemos un COVID-19 como el portal de información. Y un aplauso para Mary Oldman. Ella fue nuestra designada del COVID-19 y diariamente ella seguía y asistía a las juntas y simultáneamente ofreciendo desarrollo profesional a nuestro personal. Estamos cumpliendo con el reporte y estamos haciendo un paso más para informarlo en nuestro sitio web. Algunos casos positivos de nuestro personal o estudiantes en el sitio lo estamos publicando con la notificación. Y bueno, vacunas, gracias Bridget. No tenemos mucha información de eso. Voy a hablar algo de eso y después el doctor Gallagher si tiene alguna información de actualización que sea de alto nivel de ansiedad para todos, de dónde viene esto y si hay una mala comunicación de si el Estado está implementando cosas plan A o B, pero en resumidas cuentas estamos en constante comunicación con nuestras escuelas porque están en enlace con Kaiser y además una semana por medio, también reviso yo con el hospital el camino para ver qué recursos tienen para nosotros. Además, estamos también tratando de trabajar con SIG porque el seguro que maneja la escuela por parte del proveedor de salud y también recibir actualizaciones de todas las juntas semanales. ¿Qué ha escuchado usted, doctor Gallagher? Hace una semana yo escuché de parte de Marianne Duan que el Estado va a comenzar, se espera comenzar a hacer que los educadores sean 1B al final de enero. Y esa fue lo último que escuché de ella. Y lo siguiente que escuché fue que el Estado está pasando el objetivo de que los de 75 para arriba pueden recibir la vacuna, ahora es 65 para arriba. Y eso no se basa de si usted está. Mientras tanto, estoy escuchando como evidencia de anécdotas de educadores que que no han podido sacar una cita, no inmediatamente, pero sacar citas con diferentes proveedores para las vacunas. Entonces, no sé, es mi respuesta. Pero lo que sí hicimos, lo que escuchamos de Marianne DeWine es que el condado está ofreciendo quién del condado es responsable de administrar las vacunas para los diferentes estudiantes. Por ejemplo, las farmacias como CVS y Walgreens, creo que fue la otra, son responsables de los establecimientos de cuidado largo. Y los empleados de las escuelas o maestros, a ellos, Kaiser o BAMP, quien quiera que sea el proveedor, les va a ofrecer las vacunas con tal de que estén asegurados y tienen los medios y todo el equipo para administrar las vacunas y les envían recordatorios y ese tipo de cosas. El Departamento de Salud del condado va a rellenar los huecos. Por ejemplo, el lunes, una de las preguntas que salió fue que yo soy empleado de la escuela, pero yo no tengo seguro por medio del distrito, ¿dónde yo iría en ese caso? Y lo que tengo entendido es que esa persona recibiría asistencia de parte del Departamento de Salud de Condado. De nuevo, esta es información que ya ha pasado una semana, pero eso ha sido lo último que he escuchado. Y sí tiene sentido para mí que, por ejemplo, yo soy un miembro de Kaiser, yo iría a Kaiser. Tiene sentido realísticamente. Pero vamos a ver al pasar el tiempo si sigue así las noticias. Eso es todo lo que sé. Bien, si cubrimos esta información en nuestro día de desarrollo para el personal el martes y les dije que pasaran esa información a la mesa directiva y que les vamos a estar actualizando si escuchamos algo más. Lo último, quiero proyectar aquí la última diapositiva, los próximos pasos. Ya cubrimos uno de estos puntos. Vamos a continuar nuestra expansión de SLGs. Tenemos TK y primer grado casi completos y los otros cursos, puse aquí segundo grado. Hay que tener en cuenta la propuesta del gobernador, pero hay que tener también la evidencia. Vamos a asegurarnos de que tratemos de adherirnos a esto. Así que vamos a prepararnos para segundo grado. No inmediatamente, pero va a ser nuestro próximo paso. Estamos planeando para difusión y comunicación con los padres, compartir toda esta información. Estamos tratando de equilibrar el tiempo para no salir tan temprano y poner ansiosos a todo el mundo. Estamos esperando hacer eso al debido momento. Y en la escuela secundaria vamos a continuar la expansión de SLGs también. Les vamos a traer a ustedes la aprobación para la escuela secundaria de MOU, es decir, la carta de términos, y para el 4 de febrero y van a comunicar directamente a los estudiantes. Y de nuevo, ellos nos aseguraron que no es una sola llamada, que ellos van a seguir tratando de animar a que los padres tomen ventaja de esta oportunidad, porque esta es como la tesis de nuestro plan, de llegar a los estudiantes que no están accediendo al programa virtual. Y vamos a identificar apoyos adicionales, un modelo de apoyo especialmente en la escuela secundaria para cuando regresemos a clases a los de sexto grado. Y con esto, esta es la actualización de la implementación hoy 21 de enero. Muchas escuelas están haciendo el trabajo duro, pero ya está empezando a implementarse. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Y agradezco el tiempo de ustedes y la concentración de ustedes. Gracias, Jeremy. ¿Hay alguna pregunta adicional para Jeremy? Nancy.
Has there been clarity in this?
Ha habido claridad. Esto es más para Mike, de quién está proveyendo el EDD. El plan que se ha implementado tiene cosas específicas de qué clase de PE va para cada nivel de interacción con los estudiantes. ¿Ha escuchado usted más de parte de Mary Ann de esta guía en particular o acceso de PPE o equipo personal de protección? El condado nos dio muchos mascarillas y otros materiales hace unos meses, al principio del año escolar. Todavía tengo eso, pero no he escuchado noticias de que van a volver a darnos más, pero en este punto es más que suficiente para durar hasta el final del año. Eso es lo último que tengo en cuanto a eso. Y va a ser nuestra responsabilidad de ahora en adelante, cuando pasemos a verano y a otoño. Bien, gracias. ¿Algo más? Gracias, Jeremy, por la presentación. Sé que también hay muchas personas que están trabajando detrás de las escenas para poner todo esto a funcionar. Gracias y felicitaciones. Y algo que hablamos la semana pasada, si pudiéramos seguir haciendo una lluvia de ideas, la preocupación es si podemos, ¿qué podemos hacer para ayudar? No sé, pero ustedes ya están planeando para primavera, pero tratar de seguir, buscar las maneras de ayudarlos a que se sientan más seguros. Si pudiéramos sacar soluciones. Sí, estoy de acuerdo. El récord de rastreo, este tablero de información, vamos a poner todo eso ahí. Bien, gracias, muchas gracias. De parte del público, ¿tienen ustedes algún comentario en esta presentación? Si lo hay, levanten la mano digitalmente. Ahora le vamos a dar la palabra a Elia. No le estamos escuchando, Elia.
I can do it. Zuzel Vera Pacheco.
Susel Vera Pacheco.
You can go ahead and speak.
Ya puede hablar.
Okay, now I can speak. Cool.
Bien.
So I just wanted to mention because
Quería mencionar, se mencionó que ustedes no quieren compartir las asignaciones de clase porque ustedes piensan que va a ser estresante, pero como padres necesitamos saber, tener un plan para apoyarlo, para lo que sea, y tener algún resultado nos hace saber que podemos apoyar, ya sea una sesión de la mañana, la tarde, porque si sigue virtual puede ser más fácil, no sé. Entonces no piensen que eso puede ser una mejor idea. No sé si soy yo solamente que quiere tener un plan a largo plazo, pero yo pienso que es mejor saberlo. Eso es todo.
Thank you.
Gracias.
That makes sense. I'm sure
Y
it's not
tiene
just me,
sentido.
for sure.
Estoy seguro que no es solo usted.
So, I
Estoy
appreciate
seguro
that.
que
Thank you.
muchos padres piensan así. Gracias.
The next one is Lupe
El
Escareño.
siguiente es Lupe Escareño.
Hi,
Hola,
my son, he is
mi
in
hijo
third grade
está
with
en
Miss
tercer grado con la señora Yao.
name's Hector.
Su
So,
nombre
I
es
just had a
Héctor y
question.
tengo una
I came
pregunta.
really late in the presentation.
Llegué tarde a la presentación.
So is
Estoy
the
confundida.
school
¿La
not going to be
escuela
opening soon, or are
no
you
va a
guys
abrir
anticipating it
pronto o
opening
ustedes
in February for the third
anticipan
grader?
que se abra
Sorry,
en
I wasn't
fiebre,
really
en
clear.
febrero?
I wasn't sure about the
Discúlpenme, es que llegué tarde a la
clarification on that.
presentación, solo quiero recibir aclaración.
Jeremy or Mike, could one of you give her
Jeremy
a quick
o Mike,
summary?
¿le puede dar un resumen
for time?
rápido
Yes, I can.
del cronograma? Sí, yo
So
puedo.
Lupe, the plan is
Lupe, el plan
county goes
es,
into the
una vez
reducing
que
mode,
el condado pase al
we'll
nivel
notify
rojo,
everyone, so
vamos a
teachers,
notificarles a
staff,
todos, a los
in 2
personal, a los
weeks,
maestros,
and then the plan
en
is
2 semanas.
within 2
Y
weeks of
el
that,
plan es que
that's when the
en
first day
2 semanas es ahí
of
cuando el
in-person
primer
instruction
día
will
de la
begin.
instrucción en
So
presencial va a
right now,
empezar.
we're seeing
Ahora
purple here.
estamos
The good
todavía
news
en el
is
nivel
that, you
púrpura.
probably heard
Las
Steve,
buenas
things have
noticias
kind of
es
leveled off and
que
starting to move in a more positive direction.
estamos pasando a una dirección
Here
más
as well, we're
positiva
still
en nuestro condado
in a
también.
pretty severe situation, but at
Aún
least it's getting
así
better.
estamos en una
So
situación
hopefully,
grave, pero se están
we
mejorando
won't
las
wait too
cosas.
long until we're in
Esperemos
the
a que
yellow
no
zone.
tengamos que esperar mucho para pasar al nivel rojo y podamos decir vamos y y 2 semanas de planeación y después
Dr.
vamos a
Garza,
empezar
for third
instrucción
grade, they
presencial.
start right away, correct?
Pero el tercer grado no empieza
Oh, that's right.
inmediatamente, ¿verdad? Sí, así es. Ellos
What's the
esperarían.
transition for that, Jeremy?
¿Cuál es la transición
It's
para
roughly
ellos,
2 weeks,
Jeremy?
again, depending on when the
Aproximadamente 2 semanas,
second
dependiendo
and
de
third
cuándo
cohort
empieza
would be 2 weeks after
el reloj,
the
va a operar
return of the K and
do-
1
dentro
cohorts.
de dos
What's the
semanas.
estimated time? Thank you.
Es el tiempo estimado.
And the
Gracias.
reason for that is just
La
to
razón es
allow the
porque
school site to
para
get into
permitirle a
the
los
protocols
sitios
and get each
que
cohort as
pongan
safely as they can
en
back.
implementación los
Thank
protocolos.
you.
Bien, gracias.
All right, is there any more public comment?
¿Hay algún otro comentario del
Okay,
público?
thank you.
Eso fue todo. Bien,
And thank
gracias.
you for those who shared.
Gracias a aquellos que
Great, we're on to
compartieron.
item 5,
Vamos a pasar al punto
consent
5,
agenda. If there's any
agenda
public
de
comments on
consent para
agenda,
dar aprobación.
please use the
Si hay
raise hand
algún
feature now.
comentario para esta sección, levante la mano ahora.
All right, I'm not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
No estoy viendo ninguna. ¿Hay alguna moción?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Yo paso la moción para aprobar la agenda.
Is there a second?
¿Hay alguno que la secunde? Yo la secundo.
Board, any comments on consent agenda?
¿Algún comentario en cuanto a la agenda?
On,
Tengo una pregunta.
can I ask about Walden
¿Puedo
Westside?
preguntar
Because
en otro
the
punto?
foundation
Porque la
was
fundación
asking, I saw the email went back,
estaba
there's a
preguntando,
updated version
hay una
on
versión
the last
actual
page.
en la última
The
página.
foundation was
La fundación estaba interesada en saber por qué SMS tiene
CMS had a
4 días
like the
y
most
CMS 5,
days.
porque la secundaria
So
tiene días
is
diferentes.
that just a calendaring issue
¿Es
for
un
the schedule,
problema del
or
calendario o el horario
is it some innocent
o un error
reason why it's
inocente?
different?
¿Hay alguna
Just if
razón por
they're
la cual
concerned
esté
about helping
diferente?
in some way.
Si podemos ayudar en alguna otra manera.
Definitivamente voy a hablar sobre esto. Es el número de clases de estudiantes que esa escuela intermedia tiene a través de las diferentes semanas. Entonces los miércoles era un problema porque es día de tutoría, por eso eran los 4 días. Sí, gracias.
All right, any other comments or
¿Algún
questions?
otro comentario?
All right, all those in favor?
Todos
Please
a
say
favor.
aye.
Sí, sí.
Chair votes aye, and with that, about the motion
Con
being
eso,
passed.
la presidenta
Now on to
sí, o
item
con eso
6,
la moción
public
pasa,
comments
o
on
al
closed
número 6, acerca de los
session items.
comentarios
If
del
any
público sobre puntos
public
que
wishes
no
to
se
speak on any
cerrara. Entonces,
closed
si el
session
público
items, please use the
quiere
raise
hacer un
hand feature
comentario
now.
acerca de los puntos de la sesión cerrada, por favor, levanten la mano virtual.
I don't see any.
No veo a nadie.
All right, thank you. We are going
Gracias.
to convene to close
Ahora
session,
vamos a continuar
where
con
we're
la
going to
sesión
talk about
cerrada.
public employee performance
Vamos
evaluation
acerca
superintendent,
de
and there
la
will be a bit of time
evaluación, desempeño del
for
empleado
those that we
público.
don't see
Entonces,
when we
para
come
esos que
back.
nos vemos cuando nos
Thank you for
regresamos,
joining
gracias
us
por estar
tonight.
aquí en la noche. Y
And board, are we good going
mesa,
straight
está
into
bien
closed
si
session?
continuamos
Maybe
con la
we'll do a
sesión
break after
cerrada y luego a lo
that.
mejor hacemos un
Does that work?
descanso después de eso.
Do we
¿Está
do
bien?
like just a
We have a
Vamos
break
a
now?
3-minute break
tomar
now
un
and then we'd probably be
descanso
okay the rest of
ahorita
the time?
y
Okay,
luego
so let's try
continuar
to
por el resto
meet
del
up
tiempo.
about 8:04,
Vamos a
8:05.
estar aquí a las
8:06
8:05 como a las
session.
8:06 a la sesión cerrada. Gracias.
All right, thank you everybody.
Gracias a todos.
Like I was saying when I introduced the topic, I think I found it very interesting and very timely. And I think it seems like every month, it seems like there's more reason for looking at the topic. And I hope everyone had the chance to participate in that suggested competencies and do a self-evaluation. And like I mentioned in the email before, we're not going to ask you to share anything you're not comfortable with, but if we could go around and share a reflection on what you found notable in the reading, and then maybe share something surprising that you realized or reflected on from that self-evaluation. I think that would be a good place to start. And I did ask for our staff if they wanted to take part in the conversation to share some experiences based off that. I would appreciate hearing that too. I think we all would. So if anybody wants to start off. Or I can.
Great article, Jeff. I mean, it's a really great article, and I really responded to it as someone who's, you know, struggles with this. I mean, I feel like I try to put myself in, you know, like as an educator, I was horribly incompetent until I was slowly educated by some experience in the classroom, and it took a while. And like since then, like what I've learned since then, I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, I was so ignorant. I was like, why was I even allowed to be in the room? You know, it's just like, I feel like it is a growing process, and it's humbling, and you know, it's very just the article was just very, very familiar, because I feel like I've said some of those things before, like different parts of my understanding, and I feel like now when it's like I can see some of my own growth in the article, which makes me feel, you know, okay about myself in some ways. But I just am so clear that I, you know, have more work to do. So but I really liked the article. I felt like it was, because it was around education, it was relatable, you know, for what we're doing here.
And it occurs to me that I should probably go in a little detail, because we have some people from the community that are watching, and I want to make sure they understand what we're reading. We were reading an article from Brooks and Murray. Its title is "I Know My Place: How Whiteness, White Culture, and White Educators Permeate and Shape Universities." And we took a self-evaluation about competencies for white allies and change agents. And the whole basis of the article is to talk about it's effectively it's three categories of people who kind of just avoid in general. People who believe that they are colorblind and yet stay silent or avoid. And then people who are more open and willing to take the challenge. But it's so that's something that we wanted to go deeper on, and I really appreciate the board for allowing it. So
Jeff, I'll just add, it's if anyone wants to see both of those things that you just mentioned, it is in the agenda that's posted on our website. So both of the competencies and the article are in the agenda.
and I'm not sure if I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bridget, if you had something more to say, but
I mean, I'm willing to converse. It's not like a done. I don't have like a firm statement.
I think what I found interesting was just kind of going off what you were saying. As I was going through the self-evaluation, I think, the Jeff 10 years ago would have marked something probably a little more generous. And then the Jeff 5 years ago, getting into like administration and so on, probably would have been a little harsher. I think he was seeing this like regression instead of progression. And I think even in my current job, I think I'd actually would start going even a little further. And then the experiences last summer as a society, because I think personally, I kind of take on more, and I'm just realizing 10 years ago, I didn't even know what I don't know. And I don't feel like that experience is ever getting better for me. And then I start really looking at, do I really challenge it? Do I allow these conversations to happen? Do I encourage these conversations to happen? Or do I let the happy talk distract me or let it take over and make it go away?
One of the pieces and those are good questions and thoughts. And that's interesting, Jeff, as you were saying that like what you would have answered, like you feel like you're getting worse, right?
More aware, I guess.
More aware too, yeah. As Bridget was talking, that I was thinking about like looking back at some of my notes as I had read through it. It made me think about that comparing it to this idea of like when I got on the board, right? When I first got on, right? Like I didn't like know anything really, right? And like as I got more information those first 6 months, I gained a lot of knowledge and I learned a lot more, but at the same time, I also felt like I knew even less because then I knew how much I didn't know. At the beginning, I didn't even know what I didn't know or whatnot. And I feel like that's a little bit, has been kind of my journey with like racism and race and all that different stuff is because I kind of started this process a little bit before we did as like a board. And I think as I'm learning more, one, I do know more and I'm more aware and I'm grateful for that. But then also, I was just oblivious to a lot of stuff, right? So now I'm aware, kind of what you're saying, Jeff, like there's so much more that I don't even know, right? So in some ways I feel like I have more knowledge, but in some ways I feel like I have less because I don't even know all the things, right? Especially like with implicit bias, right? There's probably things I say and do all the time that I have no clue about, right? And 10 years ago, I didn't even really probably think about it that much. And now I think about it, but I still probably am missing it because there's just, I don't know if this is making sense. There's just so much that I don't know, right? That I'm wanting to like learn. I want to do better, right? But there's probably just so much that I still.
So,
Go ahead, Nancy.
so what occurred to me is that it's a journey, and it isn't that you don't know, it's that it's the way the system is set up for indoctrination of values that are centric to the white culture. It's difficult to even realize initially that you're a part of the problem. And so it's this journey of awareness. And as I sort through and as I go into different, meeting different groups, being with different people, I keep on having to go through that again because I didn't even realize that, oh, you have these tapes that have been loaded into your brain consciously or unconsciously. And it's a constant review kind of thing. You talk about the grading metric. I understand about being honest. And so, you know, you think that you get to levels of mastery, and then it's that humble recognition that it's a journey. And I don't think that anyone can be fully competent in every situation in this diverse world, but we can be empathetic and understand that we can be present with someone else and authentic in trying to share power and step back and listen. I remember you saying that several meetings ago, that what you find as you go through the journey is that instead of talking more and being out front, it's a matter of listening and letting others share in that decision making process and that learning process, and humbly embrace others into that space of the classroom, of your workplace.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not sure if it talks about this much on the reading, is in the talk I heard going along with it, is like the white fragility of these kind of conversations. How there's a lot of members in our own community that are willing to talk about it, but part of the being white, you know, the whiteness is there's a sensitivity to it. There's an awkwardness of not wanting to talk about it. And when you were talking about listening, it kind of cued my memory of this. And I think we've all gone through this transition when we're faced with somebody who wants to talk about this. We're not quite listening because we have this little barrier in our heads, like, I must convince them that I'm not racist.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to find a way of convincing this person I'm not, instead of literally listening to what's the concern, what's the issue, or even taking in maybe some like that microaggression that we put out unintentionally, instead of being so, you know, so defensive or feeling like your whole world's shattering around you. Listening to what happened, what did you do, and how do you correct it?
Part of the growing, and I don't know, I just have a couple of metaphors in my mind from when one part is when we think we touch button and say now we can keep moving forward, and then we realize that the button was way lower and lower and lower. Oh no, that's the button now. Now we can move forward. Well, no, actually it was a little bit down. And I think we've been touching a different button in the last few years, which, I don't know, it helped everybody to grow a little bit when you open your eyes and see another, you know, start opening more shades of what our society is, and see how deep these problems can get. And, but on the other hand, is very positive that a lot of people really wants to change and wants to understand. But it is very hard to start. I mean, you talk about white fragility. Yes, of course, because it's telling people, like, you know, people will think, I thought I was a good person. I'm sorry, I really thought I was a good person. I didn't know I was this bad. And that's not easy to like, as Bridget started saying, like, oh my God, I made so many little mistakes here and there. It's part of our growing, and now we're growing as a society, but it's, you know, I mean, as growing of our experiences in life, growing, I didn't expect to be an immigrant, and then it happened, and then I grow in different ways. And when you travel, you meet so many people, and then you're part of a different community that wasn't the one you were raised or you were the people that was around, and then you start sharing with people with different experience, and you keep learning and learning, and you are into different faced with different realities and different perspectives from people who, I mean, from people who really have no idea about, that's something that is very American. You have no idea about what's going on outside your little bubble, because you don't have to care about it. Do you eat with forks and knife over there? Do you have electricity? That kind of questions. Like outside United States, people, do you dress like normal people? Do you have, do you wear clothes? That kind of questions. Like, you know, who knows what people think about whatever goes outside the borders, and are they regular people at all? Like, you are just 5% of the world population. That's what you're thinking about, or less. Like, and the world, I know it's difficult, doesn't go around you. You are just part of it. You come with it, but it's not centric into that. And, you know, it's not the white male. It's not the, I mean, this is, when you see the world population is so rich, and just realizing that you're just a little part of it, good or bad. Well, I think I went a little bit outside, but sorry about
It's
that.
okay. It's good.
But yes, it's try to understand each other, and it's not easy, because, you know, we all think that we're good people, and we all think we're doing our best, and hopefully everybody wants to do the best and be the best person ever, so that's a good place to start. But on the other hand, you know, it's not easy to realize that you were doing something very bad, and you are like, no, really, I'm trying to be a good person. I am a good person, and then you're realizing, like, geez, I'm sorry. I thought I was.
Does anybody else have some observations or something to share?
Can I just say one more thing before, I mean, unless, whatever.
Go ahead.
I have one more idea. So, you know, when I was reading this, I was thinking about it, and well, actually it was later when I was doing the survey, and it was talking about, like, what do I know, and what do I, you know, what do I know about other people's experiences, right? And like, the more you ask yourself that question, the more you go, well, I know something, but, you know, I haven't walked in those shoes. I can be empathetic and really try to understand that experience. But I think as educators and as people in education, we have this other layer of responsibility that's so important. And you know, I grew up in public school in southeastern Midwestern Wisconsin, when it was like almost radical. Like, they were like turning us all into little socialists, and we were going home to I was going home to my, you know, blue collar, you know, like conservative family, and I was like, you know, practically had a red flag. I mean, I was like very, like, they were very, like, school was like a liberalizing, socializing place, which I'm very grateful for to this day. But anyway, I went through this kind of very liberal childhood education. I went through California schools from high school to college to master's degree, got my teaching credential here in California, and I took classes that were, you know, within the requirements, and I, you know, had multicultural classes, and I was like super interested in, you know, history. And so I was just, this year, I've noticed in media, like, I'm thinking, why am I learning about American history, right? Historical events in American history on Lovecraft Country or on Watchmen, right? Like, why am I listening? And it's because, oh, that's Black history, and we never got to that, you know? And it's just like, oh my God, you know, so I'm really like, I'm really horrified by that, you know, like just, so I've been, reading and doing some other stuff, but it's just like, we really, I think that things are shifting and changing, and I'm really interested in our new Secretary of Education, and, some changes that might come out of there. But I just think there's been an awakening, and I just hope it continues. And I just, it's a clarion call for sure. But that's embarrassing that I would be learning about these. I never, like, I think I read about Black Wall Street in, in a New York Times article within the last year, right? Like, how did I not ever, and that's on me, but it's also like this whole system that we're in and that we're on the Board of Education for. It's just not acceptable.
So I want to end on a hopeful note. All of this was about teacher education and building capacity. So this afternoon, it was like kind of competing things. The County Office of Education is, I'm in a cohort group engaged with educators around ethnic studies. Just fabulous, 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 and thinking outside of the box. So teachers are engaging in that work. And then there's the equity network initiative that the county office is doing. And so I was a part of that. Unfortunately, the meetings kind of overlap. So I want the public to know that there is a big initiative, not only within our district, but also supports out through the county to help build those competencies that are not yet fully integrated into the teacher induction process or the life process yet. But it's a lifelong journey. So I think we have a lot of good support here, and I'm thankful that for this particular board, I've been waiting for you to find that group of compassionate leaders who want to do the work. It's easy to do a plan. It's hard to do the work to get to the plan that is going to have meaning and context. So I thank you all.
And as we go forward, because one of my frustrations in education is, the standard achievement gap. We've been tackling that as a profession for, since I've been an educator, and we don't seem to ever get closer. And I think we are at a tipping point where maybe we can start being open to some ideas. Maybe education, or as institutions, we're not as relevant to some of our population. And how do we make, it's kind of like similar to what some of the conversations we're having, is how do we make that education relevant? How do we make schools more approachable? Why are some of our leaders, because I think we have a lot more leaders in the community, why aren't they speaking out? Or maybe we're not listening, or missed opportunities. Because I think in my experience on the board, I know I've brought this up a couple times recently, is just the community mistake of when we were talking about what the community thought we were talking about redistricting, some of the conversations that came up. Could have challenged it more. More difficult conversations to the community that just said some awful things about other members of our community.
I wanted to share a little
way, but said it in a very polite way.
Yeah. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience in general, a little bit further back, well, in the district. I have noticed that, well, not just since I started trying to find more leadership at the school, at the little school board over there. It's not the district. I think it was, I forgot the name, but it's not a PTA, it's a different thing. Well, I know it has a particular name, sorry. That, you know, everybody in leadership looked certain way, spoke certain way. And they look like they have good intentions, but they didn't give the opportunity, as I felt, to other people to talk and raise their voice. So even as I try and I went for it and went to the board and was part of it, I always ask, like, why, if most of the school, 70% of the school looks in certain way, the leadership does not look like that? And why, if we, I mean, I can see the way how many parents and part of the community try to speak up and see what's going on, they are not, they don't feel comfortable. And I understand why, because a lot of time I was, you know, not feel comfortable about it, like I'm bothering or stop talking, or why are you talking, or like I was asked the other week, why is this person here? That happened all the time. And I don't know exactly how many people actually try to do it, or they don't realize, or they actually bother if you know, many of the parents are, you know, trying to talk or ask. And a lot of them are not that comfortable, sometimes even to talk to the teacher or ask the teacher, or because then, you know, you see that a lot of the people who's trying to take care of things and be leaders, they get it and they form the little clicking group, and these are the people who we're gonna click and we're gonna be friends and we're gonna talk, and then we complain that not everybody is as engaged, and they don't want to be part because they don't care like we care. They don't have the same expectations that we do. We are the ones who are going to be, who care about education. They don't even care about the education of their kids. Well, you're not being that nice, you know, or that kind with these other people. You know, depending of the day, how I felt, I just stay there, just like, well, I have the right to be here, so I'm gonna be, and that's it, live with it. On other days, I was just discouraged about that, like, you know, I'm not in the mood to fight this today. But that was like day by day. But I saw a lot of parents who weren't speaking English very well, who were afraid to, you know, stand up for themselves or stand up to the teacher, talk about that. And then we have, you know, like, you try to do things for the community, or try to find extra help for people who is not speaking up, or who is not doing, you know, who apparently they don't care about education. So why we need to do that about them? Well, let's do this thing. Let's open the parent training to all the languages. Let's have parent education. And then you get it, but why? If they don't care, they never come. They are never here. They don't feel welcome. So, and that's not just the group that spoke Spanish. That I saw, you know, parents that were arriving from different countries or spoke Chinese, or that they just felt overwhelmed by it. And that was a parent participation in school. So you have a very strong group of people who wants to do stuff and take over the stuff and do stuff. And then the leadership is, you know, just look like one way, spoke one way. And, you know, even as a board member or as a president of the board member, I was widely ignored. And like, again. Okay, what? Let's finish saying that. Like, you know, I don't know what to tell you. If it's, I don't know if it's I don't think any of those were bad people. It just happened, and you know, it's a part about how we can stand a hand, how we can reach to them, how we can tell to everybody in our community, you know, to fill up that gap, to fill the gap. Like, come on, let's, you know, let's pull you in. What's the issue? How can we help? Don't be afraid. Just tell us. Some things we can help, some other things maybe we can contact with somebody else who can help. Maybe just talking about it will help. So there are, you know, it's a very complex situation, and every group will have different issues, different things that they're living through. That is, it's not always the same. It's not, you know, a cookie cut thing for everybody. Not everybody will have the same shape of problem or the same shape of answer to what the problems are. We do need to try to make better, to communicate, and to make everybody feel welcome to come and talk and tell us what is the issue, how can we help. Many of those issues we do have the answer and we can help. And as Nancy was saying the other week, how can we make our district or our schools to be the most desirable district and schools in the Bay Area? Well, we do need to fill that gap. We cannot let people just, you know, fall through the gap and be forgotten. So that the way is, you know, helping them in communication, community outreach, community education, transport maybe for many. That's, you know, one of the lists that I was giving to Mike. Maybe we can think about transport. Maybe we can think about the SMS rescheduling. Like, why, if, you know, not just English learners, but why if this kid has an issue and it's not, like, he needs repairing math, then we don't have time to give him arts or elective. But, you know, the CMS is a very nice schedule, so it gives the opportunity to those kids to also have arts. Arts are important in life. And the electives are there for a reason, you know, it's the whole child. And so, you know, that might be a way to help the kid, you know, to have a round education and make them feel better to move forward, or the families, or if the issue is, as we saw this week with the bringing, that there were some families that needed to have the food taken to their house, because even though we as a district and all the other schools are doing an awesome job about giving food to people who need it, then, you know, there are so many situations, and somehow SMS is, you know, it's not a Title I, it didn't have the net to catch all those people who was falling through the little gaps. Then what do we do? And actually the teachers are, I mean, it started with the parents, now the teachers are answering the call and are helping and are driving foods. But, you know, there are so many reasons. Like there are some families who got their dad got trapped far away in a job. He needed desperately a job, so he needed to go far away. So he's not there during the weekend, and the mom doesn't want the kids to walk 1 hour every day for lunch. So, and she doesn't have transportation. How is she going to bring all these boxers to her house? They just like, well, we cannot pay for the food, and maybe we eat, maybe we don't. You know, there's so many things. So, or somebody is sick, or grandma has cancer, or like for whatever reason there is, there are all these families who were not getting the free lunch and they really needed it. But if nobody knows about this, how can we help? How can we fill up those gaps? So, you know, one of the big part is understanding this, understanding that everybody's coming from a different idea, different situation. And culturally, I mean, for example, that little thing that is one of the things that, you know, make people like, oh, I'm not welcome here. I am used that if I get to a room, I say hello to everybody. And if I I'm the one entering, or if somebody enter to a room, they should look at you and say hello, even if they hate you. But that means that's the decent, normal, basic human thing. And I was raised like that. And, it's very shocking. Apparently, it's not like that over here. You get to a room and people feel like they don't need to answer to the hello. Nobody say hello. And that's sort of thing, like, you can make people feel welcome from different cultures. Just looking at their eyes and say hello. I mean, I don't know if it's, maybe we do have some sort of Asperger epidemic in the whole district, that people don't connect and look at your eyes and can say hello. But that's like a little thing that will get you very far with, actually, I noticed that with every culture. I say that to people from different colors and cultures, and everybody answer very well and look at you back and say hello. And that's a tiny little thing that a big part of the people that I've been living and sharing at school don't get. Hello. And look the other way, or, like, it's not a big hello, or going to the hallway and feeling like you just, if you're in the hallway, you don't need to say hello to everybody. But if and you have been sharing time with this person in the classroom, a little gesture, that goes a long way. That means, like, oh, that person doesn't hate me. That person doesn't have anything against me. So next time I can ask or give or do something. I mean, this is a person that understands that I'm alive and I'm a human. I'm not a dog walking down the street. And that just apparently it's not natural. So I just keep thinking, like, maybe, I don't know, a lot of people say that in the area, because everybody's a genius, has a little bit of Asperger, so that's why they don't share as humans.
Well, it might be a little bit of American culture too, so it might be something we need to be aware of as well, to intervene on in our own local communities. That's a good point.
Jeff, if it's okay, I think Tasha and Jeremy and maybe Rob wanted to add something too.
Okay, so sorry about that. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
that's okay. If you're not done.
Good.
Wrapping many years of this. But I mean, I'm glad that we're doing better, and I'm glad that we all want to work towards being better, and as a district, and bring people and be aware of different cultures. So I'll stop.
So Tasha, Jeremy, did you have something to share as well, or Rob?
Well, I guess I'll just chime in and build upon what Isabel was speaking to. There's something to be said about human decency. And sometimes we fall short of the first step. I heard many of you talk about, I'm not a good or I'm a bad person. Racism, as I think you spoke to, Jeff, is not about whether I'm good or bad. It's about acknowledging and owning my behavior when I'm called upon it. And so I think that's the critical piece. None of us, including those of us who may be from diverse groups, know everything. Because I think Isabel talked about it, because we all live in our own bubble to some degree. But the problem is not owning your behavior, and not owning behavior when it's right in front of you. I think the other big thing I heard here, and I would say it's a misbelief or misnomer, is that the behaviors and the things that we've been seeing over the last few months or 6 months is not new behavior. It has not changed, unfortunately, from my view or my lens in the last years that I've been in existence. I see the microaggressions, I see the macro, I see it in our policies, within the educational system, I see it in our federal government, I see it in our state systems. It's there, it's very deep as a culture in this society. And it was built on those negative principles. And so to overcome them means you have to do that work personally, and you have to do that work at home. So sometimes we as educators, and I think Bridget spoke to this, is that we have a greater responsibility as educators to have those conversations and develop the skills so that I can be a voice in the classroom. I can be a voice in the staff lounge. I can be a voice in the boardroom, and I'm willing to take the risk to stand up when it may make me uncomfortable. So I would just say, I think everyone on the screen has that desire, and that's important. I think all of you are allies, so don't beat yourselves up too hard. But it's really about acknowledging, and people don't like to acknowledge when they're wrong, whether it's about race or anything else. But when it comes to race, it's really hard, especially when we began to use words such as white supremacy or privilege or any of that. We don't want to own that behavior. So I don't think any of us can shake our fingers too much, but we can shake our fingers at ourselves. And so I think that's kind of the lens I'd love us to work from. And I think as a board, it's very difficult because you have people coming from all angles with their own agendas. And so being able to say no when it's going to be uncomfortable, but being able to say yes when that will also be uncomfortable, because someone's always going to be unhappy. So I just think if we can always keep our lens on and be willing to make decisions that are in the best interest of all of the community that we serve, I think we'll be on the right track, because it's a journey, as Nancy spoke to. It's a lifelong journey, and I'm gonna do my part each step of the way. So I think that's really more what resonates with me and the work that we do and we have to do, and why I keep doing this work, because if my interaction makes a difference for one person, then it was worth it.
Thank you.
I can chime in a little bit. Jeff, I appreciated the article, and I think it's a little bit of what Tasha was just touching on is, I've been in government and education my entire career. And so, I think it was a great vehicle for me to really take a look at myself again and how I fit into this context. So I had read the article, did the self-survey, and then reread the article again. And a lot of things are kind of sinking in. And so you mentioned, like, what is something surprising from the tool? And so, I was rated higher on the knowledge about race and racism. I've had a lot of equity work in my career, in both Cupertino and Oak Grove. And so, I have that awareness, but then I was shocked to say the next section was very low for me. Use a race lens to notify and respond effectively to interpersonal, dynamics. And that was shocking or surprising to me, because I tend to be one of action, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you've seen it even in my behavior as a staffer, like it's about action. But yet when it comes to, I can recognize it, but my action, when it comes to race in that regard, I become all of a sudden very thoughtful. Let me think about this. Let me process this. And so I think that was something that kind of really came out for me, especially in the position that I'm in, on wanting to make sure that, meeting the individual needs. And I think the big thing that's striking me, and I can't help but overlay the pandemic, is that the pandemic is affecting every individual differently depending on the circumstances of what they've come from. And so the key for me is really that how does the individual fit within the system, right? Because we have policies and rules and laws in a way that are supposed to be designed to keep everything in check, for lack of a better term, but unfortunately it is applied unequally in different ways. And so I think that's just something that I'm kind of struggling, especially being a father, a Asian American, an educator, and a cabinet member. Like I'm trying to make meaning about that. So I think the ability for me then to process and act when it comes to of being an effective advocate for equity, I think is something that I'm gonna. And that sounds. See, I'm processing again. So I will. I have to take action in that regard. So I need to be bolder in that regard. So because I do, we've had several great conversations even at the staff level, about privilege and race. And so it's just, I've been unpacking a lot about just coming as an Asian American and the legacy from, I shared this with staff before, but just even, my parents were internment, and to be where I'm sitting today, right? So I'm aware of that privilege and a little bit of guilt too. Like, what do I do, with this gift that I've been given? So those are my thoughts at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that want to add to that? Rob, did you have anything to say, or?
I don't have anything else to add to it. I enjoyed the reading and just listening to the conversation. So thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
I think my comment would be, and I'll try to keep it short, because my thoughts are actually long, is that it's, as a white male, it's good. Like, I'm kind of intentionally going last because it's pretty often that I'll go first, and it's probably not an accident that there's a white male as a superintendent. Like, the system probably caused that somehow and gave me some privilege to be there. And yet, when I think back at my upbringing, and this is the part that it's complex, we were never raised with the concept of that we were white. And then people will say, well, yeah, white people aren't aware of their whiteness. We were actually raised with the idea that we were Irish Catholic and we were other because the dominant culture was WASP. And we were very clear that we weren't that. And so it's interesting. It wasn't until like after college that I started being put into the category of white. And first it was very uncomfortable because I thought, well, that's stripping me of my identity. And then I realized, oh, okay. Then I started learning about the privilege because of how I was perceived, not how I was necessarily seeing myself, but how others were seeing me. So that just began a journey where I have to listen. And so that's why I'm going to stop talking now, because I think that's the most important thing for me, is just to listen and to understand the privilege that I have and the privilege that's gotten me to where I am, based on a construct that wasn't part of my initial upbringing, which is interesting. But it was there. I realized it was there, but it wasn't how we were taught. So.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the time and your thoughts. I hope I did this some justice, and I don't think it's the end of the conversation either, but.
Hey, before you conclude, can I actually have a question from the reading. I know we're like kind of
Sure.
late. So, I gotta go back to I'm not on the right page. Shoot, sorry. So just as I was reading it, I'm in the wrong thing. Shoot. It's not letting me, oh, there we go. I was in my, so at the end, there was a phrase, or not a phrase, but just, so it was on the very end of page 170. And they're just saying that we believe that any movement toward racial justice must include open discussion and analysis of whiteness, right racism, white privilege, and white supremacy. And white racism, that's not like a term that I had heard before, and I don't understand, and I probably should now, I'm like, oh, I should have Googled it, but I did not. So I'm curious if someone has, like, what does the white racism mean, or what does someone think that means? Because I didn't understand that.
Well, unfortunately, the talk, I don't know if we went to that specific. I mean, I can kind of speak to what I think white racism could be like a specific term in the fact that, so I'm gonna share something that is a little, I don't know, a little open, I guess, and I hope no one carries away any bad feelings. When I was in the Marines, went overseas, and we had open squad bays, and I remember the first sergeant that was assigning me to the open squad bay, because they're all little beds. He saw that I was from California, so he specifically positioned me in the middle. And what we had is, the military is very heavy in social economic capacities, right? On one hand, we had just a large population of Black Marines. On the other hand, we had a large population of white Marines. The white Marines had, it was like a deep South white.
Yeah.
And they were actually openly displaying Confederate flags. And so for me, I was considered Californian because that was new to me. That was weird, strange. And I think the education that I had up to that point, I knew what the Confederate flag meant, but I also felt, I think there was a certain protection, and there was a certain education went along with that, a little complication, a little redefining of whitewashing history. And it became sort of like just that culture instead of a symbol for what it is. And the 18-year-old self me, it's a lot to take in, right? And I couldn't really even process that. And going back, like the 50-year-old self looks back at that thinking, oh, there's so much I could have done, right? But the institution in itself also kind of protected me, where I could kind of walk away like, okay, well, and I'm safe, right? Because it's a certain racism. And I think, does that make my act any less racist? That I didn't do anything about that? And I thought that was sort of a normal, and I maybe it's a little complicated. I'm still kind of processing that too. And these are experiences that I'm starting to wash over me and starting to just recall and pull back and start thinking there's all these opportunities that I could have done something and taken on more and put myself in really uncomfortable, maybe even like career ending, stands. Because for me to make a big deal out of that, the whole institution protected them to allow them to do that. And I would have, it's crazy. So white racism is kind of specific, where you can be overtly, covertly, or oblivious, if that makes sense. And they're all racist. And if anybody has anything different to say, I'd love your perspective on that. But
sometimes I've seen the nexus between white racism and white supremacy. But I think you're talking about the subtleties in there is important. There is an extreme component, and then there's the implicit bias and going along with the flow. So yeah, sometimes you're not even aware of it, and sometimes and you just kind of go along to get along within your culture, not for the betterment of the rest. There's a lot of rails that want to keep you in that line.
And I think that sometimes the danger as educators or administrators, or even our position, where we, see these conversations or these threats, no little, I mean, just these threats, these like, a lot of the PDs I've been going to, they call them microaggressions. It's a new term for me that I keep hearing, and do we let them go because we're in that position just to let them go because we can kind of operate in that and just ignore it? Or do we start joining the voices to call them out and having those uncomfortable conversations? Not to be, again, I mean, just kind of like restating what we said before, not to attack, but just kind of bring up the conversation and hopefully open awareness. Because I don't want to I think the intention of that microaggressions is to open up the fact that most of the people that commit those aggressions are unaware. you know, and oblivious, and they need to be made aware because we're protected.
Well, I think that's kind of where I was talking about earlier. Like, I probably miss most of the microaggressions that exist around me, right? And that's where the piece of like, I want to do more, but I'm lacking in a lot of knowledge, right? Like, I'm probably not aware of, right? So I guess that's my next step is like, how do I learn these different microaggressions, right? How do I learn?
Yeah, I mean,
How do I learn more of it to, right? To be.
I mean, we miss it because we just don't know. We don't hear it because we're protected that way, right?
Yeah.
And we need to be, that's why we need to start listening to the people that want to make us more aware. Because actually it was interesting, when I was in this PD, they broke us down into these little breakout groups. And I was, my breakout group, I was the only white person in that breakout group. And even when we were going around talking about instances of these microaggressions happening, the people were still kind of, my little learning community here, they were still kind of talking around the topic. They were being, I really definitely got a sense that they were all trying to be very sensitive to my feelings. And it was actually kind of unnerving. I realized I felt like they were just protecting me. And that's why I was trying to encourage them. No, let me know. Bring it up. But, you know, it's just experience. Like I said, I think I'm going with what Tasha was saying. The 50-year-old Jeff is a much better person than the 18-year-old Jeff was. And that comes from experience and from awareness, from learning, being open to going back and reflecting on my past self and remembering these instances that I could have taken action and making a commitment to go forward different, and still not perfect. Anyway, thank you. I hope, like I said, I hope I did this topic justice, and hope I didn't overshare on myself and change people's perspective of myself. But I'll hand it back over to Michelle. Thank you.
Jeff, and thank you for everyone. And I think, like always, right, even though we gave it more time than our short equity reflections, right, we still, right, we just touched the, you know, tip of the iceberg again. Before we, I was hoping that maybe there's something that we could kind of talk about what our next steps we want to do with equity, but I don't think we have time tonight, so we will do that another time. But I do want to, we didn't have public comment on this item yet, and so I want to open it up if there is any one from the public who wishes to speak on this item. Please use the raise hand feature now. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. And I can't remember if I said thank you, Jeff, at the end when you turned it back to me. Thank you. Thank you for taking this on and sharing this with us. And I know it's conversations we'll continue to have. And it kind of feels like each time we have these, right, we kind of get a little bit deeper, right? We're moving along that path, right? And that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let me switch back to agenda. All right, so we're on to future meetings. So I just want to say, so additional staff, you're totally welcome to stay, but we're going to have a little bit of discussion about future meeting stuff. So you are, of course, welcome to stay, but don't feel like you need to stay for the next few minutes as we have that discussion. And if you leave, thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, so we're on to the future meetings. And so we just wanted to have a quick discussion. Hopefully it made sense. And if people need, like, I think I have miscommunicated a little bit. So there's kind of two ideas, right? There's study session topics and then specifically governance development topics, which both are important, are both things that we're doing. But what I'm wanting tonight is for you guys to, we'll just do a couple minutes, kind of share what you guys might feel like would be kind of on the top of your list, like your one or two governance development specifically so we can plan in February, but then we can also use that to like plan our other ones for this spring. So I'd resent out what Greg had sent us last week. Because I feel like a lot of that summary that he gave us could be pieces that could be used as governance development. But also if there's we don't have to pull just from that, right? That just is a resource. So if anybody has anything specific that they feel like, one, if you need more clarification or not understanding, please let me know. Or if we are on the same page there, then what would be some topics, or not topics, but like a topic we would like.
So what I would like to do, I noticed that Greg noticed that there was a tension about practices, beliefs, and that people might want to do it differently. Whenever a new board gets together, we need to agree about how we're basically going to perform and do things, and that and we haven't done that. So I mean, going through the governance handbook and codifying what it is around what it is that we want to do and what we are going to agree to. The past is a guide. It's not a given.
So yeah, as I was looking at that, I felt like kind of two of his connected it. One was the piece of that, I hate to use the word tension feels negative, but that tension of like past and like moving forward, new procedures. And the other one he had about, which I think they're connected, the re-examine the tools and basic tenets of operation we use and why we use them. So that's kind of what you're thinking too, right, Nancy? So essentially those two kind of bullets he had would kind of be blended together. That was one of the ones that I was looking at too. Is there others, or do people feel like that is kind of a good general focus for our February meeting?
I was wondering if there might be one around, we sort of did something similar. It was like very abbreviated with like a quiz or something on our, not personality types, but there's something called Strength Finders. It talks about, it's actually called Nonviolent Communication. And I don't know if you read it or seen it, but it sounds a little bit like the premise for IBB, where you're looking for trying to understand other people's perspectives and where they're coming from. And even though it's not governance handbook related, I think it's team related, and like how to communicate with one another and where people are coming from. And it's not a thing like Nicole Anderson does, like what's your why, and it's not like you know, what exact quadrant are you in. I think it talks about like I think some companies have used it, like Coburn's company used it recently, and he said it really brought like their team together, like their executive team, and you know, to be more effective together, to work together. And even though we're doing things that are very different, I feel like it gives people a perspective of where they're coming from. And if that's what some people are, you know, missing from our conversations, they're feeling like, oh, is Bridget being performative? I don't know where Bridget's coming from. Maybe she's, you know, maybe she's feeling performative tonight or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if we all knew where each other were coming from, you know,
So
be a more effective team.
we've used different tools in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with the tool that you're talking about.
Or any tool, you know, I mean, you could look at that one, but.
Oh, I'm trying to think of. Jeff, do you remember when we had a facilitator come in who did that kind of where you're coming from, or understanding how you're expressing yourself, thinking? tool, and I can't remember her name. Do you remember, Jeff?
That was a while ago, right?
Yeah, Ben would know.
Yeah.
But she was a good facilitator with that particular topic, and we worked a little bit on the governance handbook as well. It was like a duality of experience. So maybe Mike can touch base with Ben to see what we used on that as well. And using a tool, I don't have a problem with using any particular tool. It needs to be administered by somebody who understands that tool and how to take the conversation forward with that. But I'm certainly open to gaining that insight, because it really does help.
Well, I'll just send you a thing of the tool and I'll send you a link right now.
That'd be great. Yeah, I was trying to find it online. I couldn't.
It's by Gallup, and so
I think I saw that.
yeah, Gallup, and it's like 34 strengths, and like you could just go through and it gives you like 2 minutes or a few seconds to answer a question, and then you just go to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because like and it gives you these things where it's like, hey, this person, like, this is a real strength for this person. Oh, and when you talk to this person, this is kind of their area of focus.
Mining. Mining. Anyway, you can send it to us.
Strengths. I think it's this one. I'll just double check.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Gallup Strengths Finder. Yeah. Okay. Send me what you have so we make sure we have the same one.
All right. Is there anything else somebody wants to add for other things you feel like are important for us to touch on, or does it just kind of hit the most important things we think? We're good?
And
Okay.
that's separate of the equity talk that we commit to have. I mean, this.
Yes. This is a part of our board development.
Governance development.
Yeah, where we just talk about how we're functioning as a group. We're not doing the business of governance or anything about the district. It's how we are forming as a team. Yeah.
So like similar to what we did last week, right? Last week was governance development, right? So that idea of like, I kind of like what Greg said, right? That idea of like, he's like, he goes in with boards that are a mess, and then boards that are like doing well, who want to be refined, right? So it's like our refining process. Okay. All right. I think this is good. And then we will at future time, I think we'll keep doing our short equity reflections at future time. I think we can talk more. I think we need to have more equity discussion. And then we'll also have a chance to talk about study sessions. And I know, so Mike, maybe tomorrow in your weekend report, whatever you call it, when you send out, maybe you could send out that study session list. I know a few people have sent Mike some stuff recently. Jesus took, we kind of created one last year. So Jesus took that list and has just been adding people's on. So Mike, would that work if you send that out tomorrow?
Yeah, yes.
Everyone kind of look over. So that's changing gears, right? That's the study session. So not our governance development, but the study sessions where we kind of will dive into, more topics related to education.
I did, talking about these little things, maybe about learning for equity. We did got a particular class at college. They gave to, everybody in the staff and teachers how to, with even some preachers came, a very powerful speakers telling us about how to be anti-racist, actively anti-racist all the time, and how to spot microaggressions, and they were very, very good and powerful, but I don't know, we'll have to research if there is anything out there that we can.
if you have a great resource, then I would say send that on to Mike and Jesus, and we can, Mike and
Put that for
add in the
consideration.
equity stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are we?
Right, and another thing is just to circle back on the equity plan with Nicole and see where we're at on that, because I feel like I'm dangling Bridget from not having closure of this tool and the thing that we spent so much time on. I don't know.
From your equity network, is that what you're talking about?
Right, where
Well, we came up, we put that plan together and we reviewed it as a board last year. And then it just kind of like, we said like, hey, here's some issues that we think are top of mind. And then it just kind of stopped. And so, I mean, it didn't stop, but it like changed, right? And then the pandemic hit and stuff. And so it just kind of is on pause. So I think as long, hopefully the people who are meeting are still, looking at that, but it is a good tool. I think for me, the big takeaway was, for being a more effective board member, like I would like to have a common language for when we go out to schools and look at things. Like I was telling Mike and Michelle that doing a site tour of someone else's campus, but like through the equity lens, like we did up at that high school, Nancy.
Equity walk.
What?
The equity walk.
The equity walk, because I feel like that was a way, that was the most, it was like a hands-on learning experience about equity, like in terms of like space and practice. And it gave you like very clear ways of like not talking in the room and, like kind of protocols about visiting. It was like very kind of school board member friendly, I guess, of how to talk about things and notice things without making people uncomfortable in the room. And then
So are you suggesting that could be a board or governance team development?
Well, I think that'd be more study session.
More study session.
Well, I was thinking like it might be a study session because we'd be learning together, but I feel like it could also be something where we could take it forward from there, because then like when I go to then we would kind of have a common language of like when we go to like, let's say, if Isabel and I reported back from what we saw at the SLGs, like we would have a common language in how we would discuss it, right? Or we might discuss ahead of time things that we would look for based on the equity lens that we were talking about. We go in, we look, we come out, we talk, and we kind of report back like what we noticed. And it's not evaluative, but it's just like, it's just a language,
So I think we're going to discuss the different things that we're going to include on the agenda at the next meeting. Is that right, Michelle?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, either February 4th or February 11th. So that would be like something we would discuss then. Yeah. Okay. So our next meeting, thank you everyone. I appreciate your input. And our next meeting is Thursday, February 4th at 7 p.m. That is a regular board meeting. And then it's not on the agenda, but just a reminder, February 11th is a special meeting, and that will be a governance development meeting. And with that, I adjourn at 10:30.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks, everyone. Good meeting.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Jeff, again.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for sharing. Okay.
Happy almost weekend. Thanks,
Aaliyah,
everybody.
you were so quiet this time.
Is it still